Coming up Wednesday, March the 9th at 6 o'clock. This is beer tasting number 91 for us. We're closing in on that big 100. And we have a brand new brewery to show you. This is Container Brewing out of Vancouver. And I think you're really going to like the styles because we finally have an Irish Red to show you. Now, the artwork on these is absolutely fantastic, as you can see, but this is a brewery that we've really been wanting to do for a while, and their beer's been selling out very quickly. We have a German Pils, we have their Wayward West Coast style pale, and their Juggernaut Nitro Imperial Stout. So that's going to have that lovely kind of creamy mouthfeel, that thick nitro head, but yeah, an Irish Red. We are going to be joined by Mike Maxwell of Nectar Imports, who is the agent for this brewery. You know, I'm hoping this is going to be like the Category 12 we did a few months back, where we just lost our minds about how we'd never tasted Category 12, and the beers were just absolutely incredible. So, all that and more coming up Wednesday, March 9th, 6 o'clock. We'll see you then. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday night, and welcome to, well, I was going to say our beer tasting, but really it's Adventures in Computing with Aaron Trozo. We've had some fun tonight already. It's been a good time. But we are here to taste some beers. We have Container Brewing as our guest focus tonight, and we have a guest tonight. We have Mike Maxwell from Nectar Imports. Hello, Mike. Nice to have you back.
Hey, great to be here. Yeah, happy to be back.
Yeah, some of you may remember Mike. He was our guest way back when we did a tasting at my kitchen table, and we did Great Lakes Brewing. You were our guest back then, too.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to be talking a little Container Brewing here. Our tasting order is going to be the Pilsner, the Red Ale, the Pale Ale, and then finally the Juggernaut Nitro Imperial Stout for everyone at home. As we crack open our first can here, the Pilsner, Mike, why don't you give us a little history on Container Brewing?
Yeah, sure. Container Brewing has been around for a perishingly short time. They started in November of 2019 after about a year of building and planning to get the brewery going. So they ran basically in their first 6 months straight faced into a pandemic. So they've been pivoting and adjusting and brewing ever since. But they make some amazing stuff. And I met Dan Webster, one of the founders from Container Brewing, in late 2020. So incidentally, actually, they started their brewery roughly the same time that I founded Nectar. So they're also a young company. So it was basically three friends that started the brewery. They're in the Vancouver East Van district. So if you imagine for those of you that might have been to that area, there's a triangle of breweries. There's Superflux, there's Powell, and Strathcona. Those are three breweries that are sort of within blocks of each other, and Container is sort of located right in the middle of them on Franklin Street. So they're right down there in the action, kind of like
that's
in
a murderer's row. Like
it really is. Yeah, it's a great time. There's lots of Temporal Brewing is down there too, so you can hit 5 or 6 or 7 breweries within a couple of blocks of each other, kind of like in Calgary in the Manchester Brewing district. Yeah.
I was gonna say that, like, you've got to make a hell of a brewing case to bring people into your tap room when Superflux is just a short stumble away. So
I know. Yeah.
The beer better be pretty darn good.
Yeah, they opened just before Superflux did. I think Superflux was planning on doing their grand opening in spring of 2020, and then they pushed it back to the fall, and then they've kind of been moving through it ever since. But yeah, there's it's amazing when breweries open so close to 2020, and you can imagine what they've been doing. Probably selling a lot of beer, but not maybe as many kegs as they thought they would.
You know what? I don't mind that. That's perfectly okay with me. Kegs are a pain in the ass, or more specifically, a giant pain in the lower back. I don't like doing kegs anymore. It's no fun.
Exactly. Now we got young guys at the breweries, I'm sure, that are hauling the kegs around. Us old folks, we use all the help we can get, so, or just avoid them entirely. So
exactly, we mostly just avoid the young. So, oh, you meant the kegs?
Yeah.
We probably just meant the young. So, Eric asked, we haven't done a Powell tasting yet, have we? No, we haven't yet, but I think we'll get around to that at some point. So we've got Container Brewing in Vancouver. It's down with Superflux and Powell and Strathcona. I noticed we don't have like a big IPA on the table. Are they focusing more on malty beers, or is that just an illusion of what we have in front of us tonight?
It's an illusion. I think what they had available right at the time when I imported they were focusing on their winter stuff. So these were all brewed pretty fresh. So I want to get some fresh stuff in from Vancouver, but they do have a pretty good lineup of New England IPAs. Point of fact, their founding brewer, Tim Jewell, who basically was with them just basically until the startup. That was his sort of his agreed upon time. He's from New England originally and sort of brewed in that that wonderland of hazy New England IPAs. So he's got some good recipes up his sleeve, and they do make good New Englands. I'll probably bringing some in the next month or two. I think they've got some good stuff on the table, and they're not afraid of big West Coast IPAs and more traditional IPAs as well. So not all hazies there.
It's kind of funny. We now talk about the Northeast as being this paradise of hoppy beers, whereas I can remember like, hey, let's talk about the Northeast United States, and this is pre-Hill Farmstead, pre-Alchemist Heady Topper, and it's like, cool, there's Southampton Brewing who makes a cool Imperial Stout, and there's like Sam Calagione at Dogfish Head, and if you really want to expand it, like Brooklyn Brewing, there really wasn't much going on until Alchemist / Hill Farmstead really kind of brought this style into focus, and now it's a huge deal. But until then, like New England IPAs, just they were like, the New England or the Northeast of brewing, just it didn't exist. It was like, oh, if you're in the Northeast United States, why don't you just go to Montreal? They have brewing there. It's actually good.
Yeah. And there was not like there wasn't a lot of breweries, but they hadn't really sort of made their stamp yet. I mean. And the hazies just have taken over the entire brewing culture. They probably sell more beer 2-to-1 than any other style, probably, maybe even more than that.
I think in the U.S., and this is a few years old, but 50% of the entire craft beer market was IPA, and I think now it's probably more like 85 or 90% of the entire craft beer market is IPA. Wow. And I'll definitely be like president of the part of the problem club because I pretty much exclusively drink IPA. I love other styles. It's just if they have an IPA on tap, I'm weak. I'm not going to say no.
Oh, totally. I'm the same way. I get hazed out sometimes, but at the same time, I drink a lot of hazies. But it's like when I envision like the perfect like craft beer that gets me excited about like new beer, it's always a hobby beer.
These days, it's usually more West Coast. I really need to get back to Santa Rosa. I need to get back to Russian River, who, by the way, did make a hazy IPA, and it was not very good, which was hilarious.
Not in their wheelhouse,
it was actually really bad. I was there just before COVID, the summer before COVID, and hazy IPA was really just getting rolling. I was at Russian River having a shitty pizza, because you have to if you're at Russian River. You have to have the shitty pizza. And they were like, oh, what do you want? Do you want Blind Pig? Or do you want Pliny the Elder? Do you want Road to Hill 56? I'm like, yes, I'll get to all of that. I'm going to have all of them probably several times. Yeah. But I see you have a hazy IPA on. Let's try that. And it was dreadful.
What was the staff's reaction? They're like, okay, is that the first one you want to try?
Yeah, it was something. Yeah. It really was. Okay, so let's talk about this Pilsner. Of course, many different styles of Pilsners. This identifies as a German Pilsner. Tell us a little bit about German Pilsner versus other styles as a refresher, and then let's dive into this beer.
Yeah, so German Pilsners historically date back to, I think, the mid-1700s, abouts, and they are almost a direct reaction to Czech Pilsners or Bohemian lagers in that sort of region. They were sort of taking over the European mainland, and the Germans, who were traditionally brewing masters or brewing, they were the head honchos in that area. They wanted a piece of the action too, so they brewed their own version of it. So, comparative to a Czech lager, German Pilsners are lighter, a little bit softer, maybe a little bit less hoppy. But this guy is an interesting take on it because it does use like some pretty interesting hops that give you notes that are a little bit left of where a regular German Pilsner should put you. You'll get a little bit of like tea, like a little bit of thyme. It's very herbal.
Thyme's a great call. Yeah, I wouldn't have picked that up until you said it, but the thyme's right there.
Yeah, it's a very herbal forward, and the hops. I'm just going to read them off here if I can read the small print. We've got Magnum, Aurum, Diamant, and Hort, and I'm pretty familiar with Magnum as a bittering hop, but
yeah, that's an old school bittering hop from my old
right
days.
Yeah. So Aurum, but Diamant and Hort, I have never heard of those hops before, so I'm gonna have to follow up with them.
I've seen Diamant on some beer labels before, but I've never seen the other two. No.
Yeah, so they kind of went with the. I was told that these are New World hops, and so they're kind of getting a spin on it. The guys at Container really do like to innovate and sort of try to push styles into sort of like different categories. They're never going to brew a beer that's going to be bang on center of the style.
I just lost a lot of you.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
You done? I have nothing. I've completely gone.
Hello?
Whatever,
Okay.
Aaron, just...
Good. So where did you lose me? Because I was on a roll there.
Yeah, you were. I lost you about 10 seconds ago.
Yeah, so I was saying how Container, they're never going to brew a beer that's sort of center of the style. You'll find that most of what they do is a little bit of a twist. I find a lot of West Coast breweries do this. Not too many of them are right in the middle of brewing. Like they're never going to make like a full-on German Pilsner, or they're always trying to twist it and add new things and innovate a little bit, which is great. And this, I think this stands up as a pretty good example of like just a nice lager. It's lighter than some German Pilsners I've had, but it's very aromatic, and it does have some nice crisp bitterness at the back of the palate.
It does, and I'm not sure I get Welch's grape juice, but I definitely get some like fruity, fleshy fruit in this. I don't think I'd go so far as to say grape, but I'd certainly say like apple into apricot, maybe into pear. I get more winter fruits, but if you're getting purple on this, it could also just be glass shape. Glass shape makes an absolutely gigantic difference, and this beer in this glass versus what Aaron's having it out of versus Sky's pint glass of water over there, they're all going to be very, very different experiences just because of glass shape. Eric asks, what's the elevator pitch for a new brewery in such a saturated location? Like, is it easier to open up and just say, hey, we're going to take advantage of this crazy brewery scene, or is it harder because, you know, there's already 5 breweries there? Why do we need 6?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I'm sure it's a question that the banks posed intently to the owners when they were talking about opening a brewery. But I always put it like this: I always say that in any city, there's a lot of restaurants, and nobody bats an eye at a new restaurant, but the ones that come to the top are the great restaurants. And so, you know, like you can open a new brewery, and that's great, but the baseline is like really good beer, right? And you have to have a very distinct point of view. You need to know what you're going to brew and why you're brewing it before you hit the ground, especially if you're going to plunk in, you know, next to Superflux and some really established breweries down in that district. You need to really be able to hold your own. So it's not enough just to open a tap room anymore and brew, you know, an IPA, a porter, and a lager. It's you need to really innovate. You need to have great marketing, and you need to be able to do it your way. And that's the same as, you know, as any brewery. You can open a new diner, but it's not enough these days to open a diner with a grilled cheese sandwich. You need to, you know, do your own thing. So yeah, that's how I always frame it. Oh, okay. Happy to fill the time. Oh, the pale ale probably next, right? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, it's a 4.8%, and that's the sequence that I tasted these. I had the pale ale after this, and it's a pretty light. It's a wild beer, in that it's like a Brett pale ale, but it's very lightly handled. So, and the body, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's very citrus forward. This guy uses like Columbus, Centennial. You're gonna get the punch of passion fruit that you get. Oh,
Yep. Is it
back?
back?
Yep.
Back?
Now say you love that.
Yeah, I can now say I love this, and it's really good. Sorry, we were adjusting some audio settings in the background. We've had a bit of an audio night.
All right. Yeah, so this guy actually was a nice surprise when I first tasted it, because it's a wild pale ale, and there is Brett in it, but it doesn't present with the funky Brett characteristic so much. It's like on the nose, you're going to get a punch of what I got, like pineapple kind of passion fruit, but it's really underpinned by all that sort of resiny citrus stuff that you get from the hops that are used. It's Columbus, Chinook, and Citra. So a lot of nice fruit on this. The wild yeast does produce a little bit of its stone fruity kind of characteristics. So. And come to think of it, I'm not sure if it's Brett, to be honest, or if it's that other West Coast wild yeast that they like to use, the domesticated one, the Sac Trois.
Yes.
And now that I taste it more and think about it, I think it's probably Sac Trois more than it is Brett.
Yeah, because Brett's so slow. I mean, brewing with Brett is very much a patient game. I know there are Bretted IPAs, but they tend to be brewed as very, very basic pale ales on the whole, and then when it's done being soured, then they dry hop the ever-loving piss out of it, and that's how you get a good sour IPA. I know Ithaca's Super Friends was made that way, and a bunch of others have been made since, but yeah, to make a Brett IPA, if you made your traditional IPA recipe, by the time the Brett component actually bothered to show up, the hops would have died off.
Yeah.
So using something like Sac Trois is a lot smarter and a lot better brewing.
Yeah, I would agree. And Brett is one of those characteristics that evolves over time, and like a dry hopped pale ale is not something that necessarily evolves. It's like a graph where they're crossing. The hop character is dropping and the Brett character is rising. And yeah, you don't want to age a hoppy beer. It's not a coexistence that works.
No, but I will admit I've kind of come around a little bit. Like I used to think that hoppy beers, especially hazy hoppy beers, like I wanted them basically right out of the brew kettle. Like I wanted them as fresh could be. I've slowly come around a little bit to like the idea of a settling period where IPAs, even very, very fresh hop IPAs, they need like a couple of weeks in the can just to come together a little bit. Like next day chili, how it's always better.
That's a great analogy. I use that one a lot myself, because with beer, is that they need a little bit of settling time. I know that.
I think we lost you there for a minute there, Mike.
Okay, yeah.
You're right back.
Yeah, with IPAs, definitely, especially really hoppy IPAs, they're going to be really green right off the bat. And everybody really sort of hammers home that like the fresh, you want to get the freshest IPAs. But yeah, in my experience, the best IPAs peak maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks after you get them on the shelf. The better, a good brewery will hold an IPA back at least a week after actually canning it, so that nobody gets those really, really green notes. So
when it comes from BC, it actually kind of works out.
Totally, exactly right. So yeah, I wouldn't worry. Yeah, this one is brewing date on this guy. Feb. Yeah, so it's about a month old, which is perfect for this style of beer. Being Sac Trois, it's relying a little bit more on the yeast character, developing some of that aroma and stuff like that. So it's not as heavy on the dry hop as you might get with a more traditional IPA. But yeah, this guy again is like 4.8% alcohol. It's very light on the.
I wouldn't guess this at 4.8.
Right?
This is a big beer for 4.8. I adore this. Yeah, this rules like way more than I thought. Yeah, that genuinely shocks me.
It's sessionable, right? Like it's a satisfying brew. It's very tangy, and there is a slightly elevated acidity, kind of. I think probably more than the first beer, because it does kind of like tart up the tongue a little bit. So, which I like a lot. Yeah.
Chris, on your comment about those red strawberry marshmallow ones, the ones with like the bitter outside and the sweet inside, I know exactly what you're talking about, and yes, it's exactly the right thing. I don't get strawberry necessarily, but in terms of like mouthfeel and perception, you're exactly dead on. That's exactly how this presents. Well, I wasn't expecting to love the pale ale. I was kind of looking at this line and being like, they're all going to be malty beers. The pale will be a little disappointing, because after 2 years, we've been down this road before where, we have the 3 malty beers and it's kind of a maltier brewery and they have their token pale ale and, it's fine, but it's clearly the weakest beer in the lineup. And here we have like 3 malty beers, and like the hoppy beer to me right now is
It's a real
Well, we're
standout.
only
It's
halfway
bright.
through. It's bright. It's
Yeah.
fun. It's interesting.
And it does have a bright and interesting label too. So
It does. Yeah, and unfortunately nobody at home got the box. So all of these do come in these really nice like craft cardboard boxes, but I couldn't find a way to like cut into the box and swap the cans, so we just used PackTex in the end.
yeah,
These do actually come in lovely, like unique boxes that kind of show off the can art, but are also very, very like understated and unique in the fact that they don't look like they're shouting for attention, despite the very wild and colorful labels. They're very understated, which I appreciate. But yeah, the boxes I tried to save them. There was just no way.
yeah, yeah. The containers. It's interesting. They their whole like the reason they called themselves container was they were looking for a word that wasn't. I think they were kind of looking for an anti-superflux. To be honest, they were looking for something a little bit more solid, a little bit more like regular. And they wanted to focus originally they wanted to focus almost exclusively on like just off sales out of the tap room, so meaning that things were going out in cans and rather than growlers or rather than kegs. They're still a pretty small brewery, so they really wanted to focus on the packaging aspect. You'll notice if you go through their whole lineup, all of their labels are interesting with really like they pay a lot of attention to the packaging and the labels and the art and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of what they're going for. So yeah, the boxes, the package, and the container that surrounds their beer is obviously really important to them.
I did love the comment about ice cream floats. Any brewery that has ice cream floats made with beer on their front page, excellent. I love a good beer float. I like that they'll make a beer float for you with anything you like, no matter how stupidly ill-advised. But I would personally probably pick like the big Imperial Stout myself. But
Totally.
if you really want a mango ice cream IPA float, then well, you enjoy next morning. That will be very hard for you.
Yeah, that's not going to be super happy with your gastrointestinal tract. Might struggle with that one a little bit.
That's not going to be fun.
Yeah, yeah. My experience, the beer and ice cream combination goes best with high alcohol, more residual sugar in the beer, so that makes the ice cream taste that much sweeter, and the beer a little bit more sweet too. But yeah, it's good. Fruited sours, maybe heavily fruited sours, and big stouts or chocolatey porters and stuff like that. So.
Oh yeah, something like a blackberry sour or something would be rad, actually, with
Totally,
vanilla ice cream. Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Mm-hmm. It's
Okay.
a good one. It's peaches and cream, or berries and cream, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along. Let's get into the red ale because I'm really eager for this, and I know a lot of other people are too. We've had so many requests over the years for like a red ale. They're like, "Oh, do you have a red ale?" It's like, no, nobody freaking brews one. Like, there's Rickard's Red. I mean, or you could just not drink beer. But I really want you've been doing this for a long time, like I have. Rack your brain. When was the last time you saw like a red ale, just a red, on the market?
I know, right? It's rare. You have to start poking around into like amber ales, amber lager styles if you want to get into something that might give you the kind of malt character you want in a red ale. I've been craving a little bit something like I used to drink a lot of Kilkenny or a lot of Caffrey's. In Calgary
I don't think we can even get Caffrey's anymore. Like, we can get Kilkenny, but I haven't seen Caffrey's in ages.
Yeah, so those are like good sort of Irish reds in a way, right? That have that really sort of malt forward character without getting into the dark beer territory. So Madra is a great. I might have put too much of an Italian spin on that since I think
it's just a touch.
But this is great. It's super bready. It's like really sort of toasty. Lots of like nice caramel character to it.
And that lovely fruitiness that you can get from a red as well. The fruit notes are in big noise here. I get all of them. They're bright. They're fresh.
Nice dried fruit and and just sort of like notes of like apricot maybe. Yeah.
Red rope licorice. Exactly. Yeah,
totally.
This is exactly what you want a red ale to be. And let's be honest, since they pulled Caffrey's from the market, it's been kind of Kilkenny or nothing. Or, Rickard's Red, which is equally nothing. So this is wonderful. It's so nice to have this because red ale is such a basically unseen style anymore. It has its own ideals. Like I always think of them as very lightly smoky and fruity and toasty and round, but they're not as hoppy as an amber. Like hops aren't a big part of it. It's just supposed to be a malt showcase.
Yeah. So that's you nailed it on the head there. The difference between this and like an amber beer and amber ale would be that there isn't a dry hop component. There isn't a sort of an overall bitterness. There are hops in this obviously, but they're just there to counteract the inherent sort of sweetness of the malt that's going on here. So like the color is gorgeous. It's like a deep gold with maybe little hints of like of red in there. But yeah, I just love how warm and embracing this is, like as we sort of I loved bringing this in because it was very seasonal as we sort of like struggle through the early bits of March here, and we get these cold snaps, and everyone's looking forward to the spring and maybe getting into lighter beers, but this one is good for a cooler evening.
Apparently Madra means red dog.
There you go.
Which makes me remember
the fox on the label there, a red dog. So.
Well, I was thinking Red Dog beer from like the mid 90s. Do you remember Red Dog beer with all the giant advertising that had? It was, I want to say it was an Anheuser-Busch product, which meant we got it through Labatt's here. It was kind of like Wildcat Strong, but worse, and with this whole like biker tough guy faux aesthetic on it.
Yeah. Okay, when you said biker, then it really nailed it home for me. Yeah, it was totally a biker commercial, right? The Red Dog.
It was. Yep. It was dreadful. It was like strong lager at like 6.5, and it was just dreadful shit. Are we back in J5 town?
Yeah, I was happy with this one. And it sold out really fast. So I think I didn't bring in a lot of this beer, so I was actually pleasantly surprised at how quickly the multi styles went. Considering usually I want to lean heavier into hoppy stuff because that's obviously
that's where
really
we make
sells.
our money.
Yeah, exactly. But I do love to fill up the, albeit small, malt sections in the fridges around the province with some good stuff.
Well, okay, I'll admit we have a bit of a different crowd watching tonight because these are people who've done the beer tastings, some of them basically every one for the last 2 years. I think there's certainly an appetite for the next big thing. Like, IPAs have been great. I still love IPA. I'm just shameless about it. Mm-hmm. I like sours. I like stouts. But I think there's an appetite for the, well, what's next? And sour IPAs don't seem to be the thing. Did you just make my face a box of Red Dog beer?
There it is, right there.
There it is, right there. Yeah.
Iron's quick on his feet.
But yeah. What do you think? I don't know. What's the next big thing? Because it seems like the entire beer industry right now is just sitting back and holding its breath and hoping that Belgian wit or red ale or something's gonna be the next big thing. Because sours kind of run its course not to the point of where it's jumped the shark. I think Hazy IPA has jumped the shark. What do you think is the next big thing? You're a very plugged in guy.
Yeah, I used to think it was lagers, and it still might be, but that might be sort of a bias on my side because every sort of experienced beer person that I know goes in these big circles of like, you have your bourbon barrel aged stouts, you have your big IPAs, you have your big flavor beers. And then at the end of the day, all you really want is something like this Pilsner or something like this red ale. So so something with a lower ABV and something that is pretty drinkable without being you don't have to think about it too much, so but I'm not entirely certain that they're ever going to overtake IPAs.
I'm not saying overtake IPAs,
but yeah,
I'm not saying overtake IPAs, but I mean the wine world, and I'm kind of looking at this in a bit of a wine lens, is the wine world's always very fatty. Yes, the world got obsessed with Australian wine for 20 years and it stopped being fatty and it just became this, let's sell a whole bunch of Australian wine for 2 decades. but it used to be, Italy and then Chile and then Argentina, and every country would have like a 2-3 year like cycle of having hype and buzz, and they had a couple of really great years. I find that beer is entering that cycle. And yes, I don't disagree with your idea that everybody, starts out and then they like start drinking beer and they get on Rate Beer or Beer Advocate or Untapped, and they start looking for these like crazy high rated beers, and they start looking for like these big Imperial stouts, and then they move out of those into like, I can't drink this or else weigh 500 pounds, and you start moving away from that. And I certainly have, to a point, moved away from Imperial Stouts. I still enjoy them in the same way I enjoy like big, heavily oak Californian Chardonnay. I know it's terrible for me. I still like it. But I kind of never got to that point of, oh, I just want a red ale. No, I still want IPAs. I never really grew up. I'm basically beer Peter Pan. So,
Well, I know that I drank a lot of dark beer over the winter months. And really kind of eschewed like a lot of new IPAs. I was drinking porters and stouts almost not exclusively, but I would start with the big porter, and then I just move into some Czech lagers or something like that if I had them around. And those are those are my two poles over the winter months. And I like smoke use in beer. One thing I would love to see is a good Grodziskie, which is like a smoked lager, like light and a little bit of smoke. But I think smoke is something that really works well in beer, and it could use a little bit more exploring. So.
we have some questions about your shirt. Do you want to give us the story on your shirt?
Yeah, sure. This is a brand new shirt, so I'm proudly wearing it. This is the Brewettes. This is the Pink Boots Brew Day shirt for establishment.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we are into
national.
the Pink Boots Day timeline. That's right. Yeah, it
exactly.
is March.
So that happened yesterday. So it's why it's all shiny and new, and it hasn't even been washed yet. So, yeah. So this is, if you look on the back, it's the establishment and Concord Group and National, and then the Pink Boots stuff. So I didn't do any of the brewing, but I was in the brewery at the time. So happily get a new.
I was in the brewery at the time. I was 3 pints deep. Yes, I was there. I mean,
yeah,
I wasn't being paid
on my laptop and on drinking a coffee more than anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah, there it is.
So yes, we will definitely be having a Pink Boots week here very soon, because they're just starting to creep into the market, which is really exciting.
Yeah. A lot of them were brewed yesterday or brewed before, and sort of will be releasing over the course of the month. So yeah, some cool stuff. I know that there's always like a custom Pink Boots hop blend, so some dry hopped saisons and pale ales and IPAs.
And yes, I do think it might be a time for a return of Morgan Rattray to do the Pink Boots tasting, because that was a lot of fun last year. We'll see if we can get her back. Yeah. Okay, so we got a bit sidetracked, but that's kind of, appropriate for this tasting.
Sure.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about Nectar Imports, like your one side, and then you mentioned you're also working in establishment. Do you want to talk about wearing two hats in this beer business of 2022?
Yeah. So I've been working in beer for several years now, and started out on the retail side, and then went over to work for a big importer, and left that in late 2019 to start my own importing agency, which is Nectar Imports. So I've got a partner, Jake Clark, who does the BC side of things. She's out in Victoria, and I manage the Alberta side of things. We quickly realized that we didn't have the bankroll to really effectively pay ourselves and import beer. So we both have a day jobs, or basically Nectar is a passion project that we work at sort of in the margins. So we've got relationships with breweries across the country, and we sort of like want to maintain those. But I am also the sales manager at Establishment Brewing here in Calgary. So that's my full-time job. That's 40 to 60 hours a week of work. But I do work at Nectar, like I said, in the margins. People will get my emails on Friday nights or Saturday evenings regarding the latest and greatest fun stuff that I bring in. And it keeps me plugged in with a lot of different breweries across the country, and sort of what's going on in other cities and festivals, and it's a good excuse to travel a little bit and meet new people, make new friends. Yeah, it's great. I love my first love right now, I would say, is establishment, because it's being I love being plugged into one brewery that is local, and I'm there when people are making the beer, and I've got my hands almost in the kettle. But yeah, importing stuff is also fun because there's so much great stuff in the world, and Alberta is like such a free for all when it comes to craft beer, and customers are so lucky that they get access to stuff. Because little agencies like mine are allowed to exist, where the AGLC doesn't care what you bring in, as long as you can bring it in, as long as you pay for it. They don't care. It's up to they'll happily charge you storage fees for it.
So many storage fees.
So many storage fees. So yeah, if you want to just send it to them, they'll hang out to it for you and then bleed off your profit margin if you're not good enough at selling it. That's for sure.
Yep. So is that currently the business model? Is in BC, she finds the beer and brings it into the agency, and then you sell it in Alberta, and you're quietly working at establishment, and like, I just have to nip over to Cabin and Annex and buy some beer and sell it in BC for big dollars.
Yeah. No, we like BC, we export Blind Man to BC. And we do Great Lakes to BC, and Container, obviously not to BC, but we do E9 from Washington up to both Alberta and BC. Yeah, and and we've brought some stuff in from Halifax. And we even did a little bit of natural wine once upon a time. And I don't think that's going to happen again, just because wine's not in my wheelhouse, even though I do love it. But that's a full-time job, selling wine to restaurants and stuff like that.
And let's be fair, I've seen a couple of natural wine agencies try to dip into beer, and it went about exactly as well.
Well, exactly right. Like, yeah, I love it, and it would be cool to have like a portfolio that's like that, as have natural wine and beer and really do that. But it is tough to do both really well, because they're they exist in different worlds, and it's different sort of techniques to sell them. So that's for sure. I'll keep my natural wine proclivities to drinking it. So
awesome. If you'll forgive me for just a moment, we're going to talk about what we have coming up next week, which is Grant Flegg, actually, of Copper and Theory, is going to be our guest next week. And we're going to do Hoyne Brewing, which you probably aren't aware of, Mike, but we did a tasting hosted by Eric and Craig last week, and it was a huge hit for everybody. And the two biggest beers that were the hit, which were not as big a hit as, Craig and Eric themselves, but it was Hoyne. Everybody loved Hoyne. So I'm going to say let's do some more Hoyne. So next week is a Hoyne tasting. We're going to do their Easy Down Pale, their IPA, their version of a Pils, and their Vienna Lager. And oh my God, this Vienna freaking rules.
I love a good Vienna Lager.
And this one really does show very, very well. So that is next week. It will be myself, and it will be Grant from Copper and Theory, who we've had on at least twice before. It'll be a lot of fun. So let's jump into a nothing like 6:40 p.m. in an Imperial Stout. Thank goodness, only 8.2%.
Yeah. So make sure that you shake this one a little bit, because it is a nitro, and then
I kind of already opened mine.
If you pour it straight down into a glass. Now, incidentally, I have the wrong beer for this tasting. I have the other nitro beer that we brought in, which is the robust the chocolate porter, also a nitro. But man, that looks delicious.
It certainly smells great. I got it all over my hand trying to shake it after I opened it, which went about as well as you'd expect.
Yeah. Container knows their way around some big dark beers. They released CY's Giant over the winter months, and that we brought a little bit of that in, and it's a big Imperial Stout that they do every year, and it's just an absolute banger that is highly in demand out in Vancouver. And it's super tasty. So these dark beers are really nice. The Stout gives you some nice roasty character. It's almost like this big molasses character too, like it's really sticky. And at 8.4%, 8.4, 8.6.
8.6, I think.
8.6, yeah. So it's not the biggest stout on the market, but it's certainly well, yeah, for a nitro beer that's going down real smooth. It's definitely a juggernaut, not unduly named.
Julie asks, actually, are you taking requests? Are you interested in like hearing what people from Alberta are interested in from BC? And I know it's never that simple. It's not like just you
Hmm.
phone up a brewery on Tuesday and by
Pull the
Wednesday
trigger.
they're shipping you beer.
Yeah,
Very often it's things where it's very limited or they already have contract commitments even though the agent hasn't brought in a beer yet. Do you want to talk a little about that side? Julie, we
for
do want
sure.
to hear what you want brought in, but I'd actually like to hear a little bit about the business side as well of like, when you talk to these breweries, how often is it like a good conversation? They're immediately interested in working with you, and how often is it's like, well, we already sell everything we have retail or to
Yeah.
3 bars, and there is no beer available. But thank you for your interest. If everything slows down and gets shitty for us, we'll let you know.
Yeah, that's surprisingly that's kind of the conversation. Now I'm blessed with a partner in Vancouver who is really plugged into the industry and has a lot of contacts, which is one of the reasons why we went into business together, because she has an absolutely mind-boggling Rolodex of people that will actually talk to her. So she takes the lead when it comes to actually sourcing breweries. Got way more relationships across the country than I did when we started. But oftentimes, like, we have more conversations with breweries that reach out to us than the other way around. And more often than not, those are breweries that we choose not to import. Yeah, we're looking for, especially when it comes to Alberta, we're looking for breweries that have something that, like I was talking about, new breweries on the market need a point of view. We need to bring in beer that can stand up to the scene here in Alberta and can bring something new and interesting and relevant to the market. So if you're showing me, your mediocre West Coast IPA out of, somewhere in Manitoba, I'm not going to be super interested in bringing that in. But yeah, so there's we want to bring in really good stuff. We have a hit list of breweries that we are that we'd love to bring in. Some of them are way too small to consider exporting anything, but oftentimes the conversation basically starts like this, where we say, okay, so you want to come to Alberta, you're into it, but one thing you need to know is that you're not going to make near as much money sending beer to Alberta as you do selling it out of your own back pocket. And basically you need to look at Alberta as almost like a marketing exercise. Everyone's going to make some money, but your margins are certainly going to be impacted, because there's no way I can bring in beer and pay you the same amount that you get like in your backyard, and still sell it competitively here. So it is a sort of a feeling out process, and a lot of breweries see Alberta as sort of their first step to exporting, which is great because Alberta is very receptive to outside beer. But yeah, it's always a conversation that revolves around how much they can make, and realistically sort of like how much they can send, and then whether or not it's actually good enough to come here. So
And that last point's kind of interesting because Alberta for a little while was a bit of a dumping ground for every craft beer and their mum
mhm.
because there wasn't anything here. Now, if I was Container or Hoyne or whoever trying to come into this market and seeing Establishment or Cabin or SYC or Snake Lake or whoever right there and being like, okay, that's a bit intimidating. How are we going to compete with the local folks? Because the local folks did kind of chase all of the U.S. importers basically out of the province. I mean, some of those
Yeah,
things
yeah.
were internal politics, like Heineken buying Lagunitas and just handing the keys to Lagunitas to Molson, who promptly ruined it because Molson is just. Is there a worse run company on earth than Molson? I really don't think there is. But no, yeah, it's kind of funny how much the market shifted away from these like big U.S. craft breweries the second that Alberta Brewing came on stream. I have to think that as somebody who brings in beer to Alberta, like you have to be really picky. Like you said, you can't
Yeah.
bring in, let's just call Fort Garry Fart Gary, and say, hey, we can't do this. We can't do this mediocre Manitoban West Coast IPA. We have to do something better.
Hmm.
Um, Happily, I'm sure that you are up to a point spoiled for choice in terms of quality, but the number of breweries that are making great beer and the number of breweries that will sell it wholesale to not sell it at the cellar door, that's got to be a very small number, and that's going to be very difficult.
It is, yeah. Yeah, and I think it's sort of shrinking a little bit as Alberta breweries come online and the beer gets better and better and better, and more breweries make really, really good beer. And local's always going to have a sort of an edge on imports, and that sort of that edge is growing. But Alberta being what it is, and sort of the market being what it is, I think Alberta breweries benefit from the presence of good imports in the marketplace because it keeps them on their toes. Like when you've got Superflux on the shelf, and you're releasing a hazy, you better make sure that your game's on point, because when people have that option, yeah, they're not gonna look at you twice if your hazy's not as good, right? Because it's the same price probably.
Yeah, it's the same price or possibly even a little bit more. Like Superflux is, if anything, a little underpriced for what they're doing.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, yeah, they could probably charge more. There's no doubt. But yeah, it's one of those things that there's a market for it, and I love that there's a market for it because it allows me to have a small business, and relationships and importing cool stuff. But I love going into places like your shop and places in Calgary with like walls of beer, and just sort of seeing just like all this riot of colors and stuff like that, and being able to pick and choose. I'm a little jealous of kids that are coming on, turning 18, 19 these days, and they walk in, like when I drank beer when I was 18, it was, if I wanted an interesting beer, it was probably an English ale of some sort.
Yep.
But
It was
it
probably
wasn't.
trad if you were going to be drinking outside of like your own
I was
house.
drinking trad, exactly. And I remember like the first IPA I had was probably from Wild Rose, their Industrial Park Ale, right? And that was at the Ship and Anchor, and that was before it was even like an American IPA. It was an English IPA. But now you've got all this fruit flavor and all these great different, like all this dynamic beer, all these dynamic flavors and all these different styles under the moon. So you're pretty much spoiled from day one. And so if you're into beer, it's a journey, and you can learn so much. But yeah, it's great, and it's a wonderful competitive market. Yeah, and and the thing is, craft beer has exploded to the point across North America that there's so many amazing breweries, and so there's still opportunity in Alberta to bring in some real whales, as they call it, or just breweries that are doing really cool stuff that could compete here and just give people an extra option, and yeah, like this, you're looking at a brewery that's not yet 3 years old, but they're pretty ambitious. Um, they reached out to us originally, looking to move some of their stuff to Alberta because they're very sort of outdoorsy, and they like Alberta's outdoorsy character too. So they saw a fit there right away, and so we don't bring in a lot from them. Like this was just one pallet, for example. This was 80 flats of beer that went very quickly throughout the province, and I'll probably bring in some
Yeah,
more in it.
it's already bloody sold out, I think, for most of the SKUs. Like we brought it in for this tasting. It's like with the idea, like, hey, if any of them are really popular, we'll bring them back. The chumps we were. It's already gone.
Asked me for samples, and I said, okay, I'm going to bring some samples by, but these are like consolation samples because the beer's already sold out. So try them out, see if you like them, and the next time I bring in beer, you got to move some fast. But yeah, and maybe next time I'll bring in 2 pallets. But that's just like I said, it's a margins passion project thing at this point. So when I bring in beer, it's like I don't want to have to hustle super hard to move it. That's why I make sure that I bring in tasty, relevant stuff, and so that it'll move really well. So, and I'm lucky to know guys like you who know their stuff and can take my word for good beer too.
Hey, I always like you tasting beer, except when I don't. But what do you got coming down the pipe, like in future? Like what's coming down the pipe for Nectar imports? Do we have anything really exciting coming in that you can talk about yet? Because I always know that's the thing. There's always new things coming, but there's not always things we can talk about on air.
Yeah, and that's a lesson that I've learned. We have relationships with a lot of breweries. and a lot of breweries we'd love to bring in, but it may not work out. So I'd rather not say any names now. But we will be bringing in more Great Lakes. That's for sure. We're going to keep fresh stuff from them. We're going to continue bringing more container, and I hope sometime probably close to summer to get another shipment of E9 and stuff, because their tall cans are always amazing and they make some fantastic IPAs. So we'd love to get some more E9 up here, and then we'll see if we can add some players to the list. But it's that just has to shake itself out.
Okay, so I'm going to answer Julie's question here about having it in with the head brewer at Half Pints. I know Dave Reg personally. Dave and I go way, way, way back. We hosted a Half Pints tasting here in the store with Dave Reg on the third release of Sellout Stout. And we did a huge event about it. I got to know Dave when the very first time he released Sellout Stout, which was his, at least in the early days, a Canadian whiskey barrel-aged Imperial Stout, one of the very first in Canada. I drove from here to Winnipeg. I was in line. I actually got in and ended up hanging out with the Half Pints crew. They're like, oh, hey, how many beer bottles do you want? I'm like, I want 2 cases because I drove 12 hours. And they were like, you drove 12 hours for our beer release? Well, you should come upstairs. We have shitty pizza. And we ended up spending the rest of the day hanging out. And I met like Phil from Phil's Pills. And I have a great relationship with the folks from Half Pints. They haven't been in the market in forever, which is a shame because the beer remains fantastic. But yes, if we could get some Half Pints here, that'd be incredible. But yeah. Yeah, no, I miss Half Pints. They were wonderful.
Yeah, I wonder who imported Half Pints. I don't know. I'm not even sure which agency it was. That was Half Pints has been around for a while. And I remember really enjoying their stuff when I was first when they first came in. So yeah.
I want to say off the top of my head, it was somebody who doesn't do it anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
It feels like one of those agencies that in the heydays of just importing everything to Alberta because we didn't have like a brewing scene, and there were a whole bunch of tiny agencies. I think it was one of those, or they may even have self-represented in the market and just had like an agent on paper.
Right.
But yeah, I don't remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. They make good beer, and they've probably I'm sure they'd be happy to bring some more in if they had a good in.
Yeah, gee, if only we had some
if only
pipeline.
we knew some agency people, right? So
yeah, or some retailers that were interested, or some customers that were interested.
The pieces are coming together. It's like a puzzle.
Awesome. Well, I'm not going to do rankings because I never do rankings when we have a guest because it's unfair. Although I will say, I really liked that pail. That pail was special. That is, well, obviously I'm not going to be able to have any on the shelves right away because it's going to be a minute for stock to come back. But when we can get these back, I think you can definitely count on the Irish Red and the Pale being on the shelves, assuming I can get the Red again. And then as we transition into spring, probably a lot of hazy pale ales and hazy IPAs and things from Container. I think this is going to be a brewery we see on our shelves more and more because the quality's right on.
Yeah, I agree, and I appreciate that. I'm putting together an order right now for some more, and I think Wayward's in there, so we'll get some more of the wild pale ale because I was pretty impressed with that, and I think there's a nice big West Coaster that's being packaged in the next couple of weeks too. So
nice,
some good hop character, some bitterness.
Craig wants a tasting note or a comment on the stout itself. I'll do that. Sorry, I did kind of forget because we got distracted talking about the beer industry, kind of in a broader sense here. Oh, Chris asks, what gap is Nectar filling that Liquor Connect doesn't? Liquor Connect is a middleman. So the way that Liquor Connect works is Mike basically goes to Container Brewing, lays out his own money, he buys the beer, he deals with all of the handling and processing and shipping and registers the CSBC with Liquor Connect and gets it all into Alberta, and then it just sits at Liquor Connect until somebody buys it. And then when I, as a store, buy it, I pay Liquor Connect, and then Liquor Connect pays Mike. So they are there to basically be a province-wide distribution network and to ensure that the Alberta government gets its taxation dollars But no, Liquor Connect, Mike is not filling a role, or Nectar is not filling a role. Liquor Connect is missing. Liquor Connect is just, they're a middleman that does a really great job of distribution. Honestly, the job they do is A, thankless, and B, quite incredible, although
Yeah.
very expensive on both ends. Um, but they're not an importer. They're not an agent. They're purely a logistics company. That's all they do.
Yeah, which is Alberta is actually blessed with Liquor Connect and the way the AGLC handles it, because having done business, we do business in BC as well. And BC is not even that bad, but it's the red tape and the bureaucracy and the way that they handle things is agonizing compared to the speed and efficiency of Alberta. So like the system for bringing liquor to market in Alberta is pretty impressive, all things considered. Kyle says it's thankless, and it totally is, because everybody rags on the AGLC and Liquor Connect, but really they deserve top marks in the country. They're by far and wide the easiest place to do business, for sure. Yeah.
Well, Liquor Connect seems like they get a hard time until you start doing business with, I don't know. Let's just say what it is, Big Rock. I have spent in the last week about 35 hours trying to unfuck all of the mistakes that Big Rock has made on my account since November 15th, and it's been hell. I had Thomas from the AGLC on the phone for about 3.5 hours on Monday, just trying to figure out what the hell Big Rock had done. It was special. So no, we are very lucky to have Liquor Connect. If you're asking what things go around Liquor Connect, nothing from out of province. Independent breweries within Alberta, such as Establishment or Big Rock or SYC in Edmonton, and even some of the independent micro distilleries, and in theory micro wineries could do the same thing. They can sell direct to the consumer and go around the Connect logistics. Molson and Labatt also operate their own order desks, as does Sleeman's, and they go around Connect. But those are basically only breweries and a tiny handful of Alberta only distilleries. Everything else, every bottle of wine, every bottle of spirits, every can or bottle of beer that comes from outside of Alberta. And actually, like, I ordered some 88 through Connect and paid the extra 70 cents a 4-pack to do it, because it was just out of Night Gallery. No, like, it all comes through Connect. It's this giant distributing behemoth that we all kind of bow to because they're really good at what they do, but also it's, if you want to be in the liquor biz, you got to deal with Connect.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
I know, tasting notes, I'm getting there. Also, you
Yeah,
drank
you're gonna
most
have
of
to
the
give those,
can,
Kyle,
Aaron.
'cause I'm drinking the porter, so give me some real time tasting notes on that guy.
I mean, it's fudgy chocolate. It's also like pencil erasers in the best way. I like that, like, graphite-y, rubbery character I get off a lot of dark beers. I do get coffee, but it's a bit more instant coffee than fresh brewed coffee. I get fruit. I get a little bit of berry. Blackberry, blueberry is definitely there.
Do you find that your aroma suffers a little bit from the nitro, rather than having all that volatile aromatics from a CO2? Like, I'm still getting I get some real, like, I get aroma, but that's just, it's not popping off like it does with the CO2.
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think you have to work at it a little more, but you also don't have the CO2 masking some of the more delicate aromatics. I think it's not as immediately likable, but if you're willing to put in the time with it, you'll actually find more.
Yeah, dark beers are generous in that regard, because as they warm up, they actually do tend to sort of like unfold a little bit more. Whereas hoppy beers, you got to stick your nose in there right away as soon as they're poured, because otherwise you might miss a lot of the highlights. So
I think that's fair. Or you could just order another one. But yes.
exactly right. Yeah. Rush it to me. It needs to be a rush job.
Yep. I'll also say kind of like a toast with marmalade thing here. There's not fresh orange, but like a cooked orange thing. There's definitely some like biscuity toast notes in the mouth. Mike's right. It's very sessionable for like an Imperial Stout. Like, yes, I'm going to feel this tomorrow because I'm almost 40 and it's going to hurt because I had an Imperial beer. but it's not punishing. It's not sticky sweet. It's not that viscous motor oil that like Dark Lord or what the heck's the one that something Tuesday, Black Tuesday. It's not one of those giant Imperial stouts that just, it has some carbonation, but it's mostly just viscosity. This still feels balanced. It still feels, I won't say light at 8.6, but it's light for its weight.
And it there's no hot alcohol there either. It's not solventy. It doesn't the booze doesn't shine through. It doesn't warm me up.
Oh, and Chris has more questions about the liquor distribution system. So yes, it's Liquor Connect. If you want to think about it, it's just a warehouse. They don't go out and find products. They don't market products. They don't advertise products. They don't do anything except take boxes in and send boxes out. They are purely a distribution company. All of the marketing, all of the sales, all of the everything, like all of these beers came through Liquor Connect, every single one. And that's true of everything that comes through Liquor Connect. They don't advertise or market or import anything. They take beers and wines and spirits that are imported from other companies. They add on their handling fees and the Alberta liquor taxes, and then they send them out to very large restaurants and bars and then retailers. And that's literally all they do. So this isn't going around Liquor Connect. This is going through Liquor Connect because they aren't importers. They are purely a distribution warehouse.
Yeah, they take their pound of flesh.
They take their pound of flesh and pass it on. And they do a very passable job of passing it on, so we don't really hate them for it at all.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mike. It's 7 o'clock. We'll call it there.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
This was good.
Is great. Yeah. I'm looking forward to doing more with you as we bring in some more small breweries, and this is great. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for your support in Lethbridge.
Well, we got to support you because, we like your beers. I mean, we're ambivalent on you, but we like your beers. If nothing else, I'll see you the next time up at establishment.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll see you next Tuesday probably, right?
Yeah, very likely, yes.
New White Ken next week, so yeah, watch out for that.
Now that's something fun. Yeah.
Yeah, we could talk about
no
that more
spoilers.
offline.
All right, we will. All right, and thanks, take care.
Yeah, have a good night.
Good night. And for everybody else who's watching at home, this has been our presentation of Container Brewing, which was a lot of fun. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you again to Mike Maxwell for joining us. We will see all of you next week for Hoyne, and we will see you then. Take care. Good night.